What would you say are the disadvantages of being an extremely beautiful woman?
What awkward questions you ask. I don't... depends who thinks I am. I don't think I am.
Tell me, Scarlett, do you never shrink from marrying men you don't love?
How did you ever get out of jail? Why didn't they hang you?
No, I don't think I will kiss you. Although you need kissing badly.
In 1939, one film swept 14 lives into its orbit, and today, not one of them is still breathing. One was shot dead in his own home under a cloud of conspiracy. One played a classic Hollywood mother at just 28. One was taken out by a taxi in the middle of Times Square. And one outlived them all to 104. Stay with me. By the end, you'll know exactly how each one fell. Clark Gable, Rhett Butler. He was the king of Hollywood. But the man you picture was almost entirely invented. The ears, the teeth, the swagger, all built by a studio.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
And the real Clark Gable carried secrets far darker than any fan magazine ever printed. When MGM's Louis B. Mayer first saw him, he scoffed that Gable was too elephant-eared to ever be a star. So they rebuilt him, reshaped his brows, slicked his hair, and finally fitted a full set of dentures to replace his rotting teeth. They manufactured an icon. But those false teeth gave the great screen lover famously bad breath, and Vivien Leigh reportedly dreaded their kissing scenes in Gone with the Wind. The darkest chapter, though, came years earlier. In 1935, a married Gable starred opposite 22-year-old Loretta Young in The Call of the Wild. Young became pregnant, and in an account she gave near the end of her life, she said Gable had raped her.
Young recalled Gable entering her compartment where he allegedly raped her, resulting in a pregnancy.
Terrified of scandal in an industry ruled by morality clauses, the devout Catholic actress hid the pregnancy, gave birth in secret, and placed the baby in orphanages for 19 months. Then, publicly adopted her own daughter to bury the truth. That girl, Judy, wouldn't learn who her parents really were until she was a grown woman. Gable's one true love was actress Carole Lombard. When she died in a 1942 plane crash, something in him broke. He enlisted in the Army Air Forces in the middle of the war, and those closest to him believed he was hoping not to come back. He got a heart attack instead in 1960, at 59, just days after finishing The Misfits. For all his fortune, he kept a note in his dressing room to remind himself where he'd come from. His only son was born months after he died, a father the boy would never meet. That was the king. But the woman beside him burned even hotter and paid a far darker price. Enter Vivien Leigh. Vivien Leigh, who played Scarlett O'Hara and won the Academy Award for it.
To announce this winner, Miss Vivien Leigh in Gone.
She was born November 5, 1913, in Darjeeling, India, the daughter of a British officer. Both of them were already married to other people when Vivien Leigh and Laurence Olivier fell almost instantly in love. Together, they'd become the most powerful couple in Hollywood. But behind that glittering romance was a woman quietly losing a battle that would kill her at just 53. She wasn't even chasing the part. Vacationing in America, Vivien Leigh auditioned for Scarlett O'Hara on a whim, a near unknown going up against giants like Bette Davis and Katharine Hepburn. And she beat them all. Gone with the Wind made her an overnight sensation and won her the Academy Award for Best Actress. At 26, she had the whole world.
Almost overnight, Vivien went from being virtually unknown to the biggest star Hollywood had ever produced.
She had everything: the Oscar, the marriage, the fame. What the world couldn't see was that she was secretly battling bipolar disorder in an age that had no name for it and no mercy for it. Then came Blanche Dubois in A Streetcar Named Desire. To play a woman unraveling into madness, Vivien reached straight into her own illness, and the role reportedly never let go, marking her fragile mind for good. All the while, a quieter killer was ticking: tuberculosis, found in her lungs back in the 1940s. Then the fairy tale came apart. 2 miscarriages, breakdowns so severe she was once replaced mid-film. In 1960, Olivier divorced her and started a new family, while Vivien found late, gentle love with actor Jack Merivale. But the tuberculosis she'd carried for years finally came for her, taking her at 53, just as she was about to begin a new play. That night, every theater light in London's West End went dark for 1 full hour.
Miss Leigh is talking to us from her apartment in London. Good evening, Grandma.
Good evening, and thank you.
Laurence Olivier outlived her by more than 20 years. He'd remarried, built a new life, yet, by many accounts, in his final years, he would watch their old films and quietly weep. If one of her performances still stops you cold, tell me which one below. Two legends gone, but the third man in that love triangle may have the strangest death of them all, and it came in the middle of a war. Leslie Howard, who played Ashley Wilkes, the gentle, dreaming man Scarlett could never let go. While Scarlett couldn't let go of Ashley Wilkes on screen, the man who played him couldn't wait to escape the set. Born April 3, 1893 in London, Howard was one of the biggest stars on either side of the Atlantic, and at 46, he felt absurdly old to be playing a young Southern romantic. He took the role mostly as a trade, with Selznick promising to let him produce a film of his own in return. But it's how his life ended that stops people cold. Leslie Howard was British, and when World War II came, he threw himself into the fight. Patriotic films, broadcasts, propaganda that infuriated the Nazis. On June 1, 1943, the civilian airliner carrying him home was shot down by German fighters over the Bay of Biscay. Every soul aboard was killed. Howard was 50. To this day, some believe the Germans thought Winston Churchill himself was on that plane. Others believe they hunted Howard on purpose to silence him. He has no grave. The sea took him. From a man lost to war, we turn to a woman who made history simply by walking to a microphone. And what happened to her that night should never be forgotten. Number 4 is Hattie McDaniel, who played Mammy and changed the Academy Awards forever. She was born June 10, 1893 in Wichita, Kansas, the daughter of formerly enslaved parents. She clawed her way up through a Hollywood that offered black performers almost nothing but servant roles. In 1940, Hattie McDaniel made history, the first black performer ever to win an Academy Award.
I sincerely hope I shall always be a credit to my race and to the motion picture industry.
Honored for her role as Mammy, but on the proudest night of her life, she wasn't allowed to sit with her own cast. The hotel was whites only, and they let her in only as a favor to a small table shoved against the back wall, far from her co-stars. One of those co-stars was Clark Gable. Years earlier, on the set of China Seas, the king of Hollywood and the then uncredited maid had struck up an unlikely friendship. Two people who'd both clawed their way up from poverty, bonded by a wicked sense of humor and a habit of pranking each other mercilessly. So when Gable learned McDaniel had been banned from the Gone with the Wind premiere in Atlanta, Georgia's Jim Crow laws forbade her from entering a white theater, he was furious. The biggest movie star on earth threatened to boycott the premiere of his own blockbuster in protest. And here's the twist almost no one expects. It was McDaniel herself who talked him out of it. The woman who'd been wronged calmed the powerful man down and told him to go. She was attacked from every side. By whites who thought Mammy too familiar with her owners. By a black community that blasted her for playing servants in a film that softened the horrors of slavery. To all of them, she had one answer that still echoes today. She would rather, she said, play a maid than be one. Hattie McDaniel died October 26, 1952, of breast cancer. She was 59. Her dying wish to be buried in Hollywood Cemetery was denied because of her race. Now the tone shifts hard. The next man had a tiny part in this film, and one of the most chilling deaths in Hollywood history. Number 5 is George Reeves, who played Stuart Tarleton, one of the red-haired twins fawning over Scarlett in the film's very first scene. He was born George Brewer on January 5, 1914, in Woolstock, Iowa. Gone with the Wind was his big break. The studio even renamed him for it. And he dyed his hair a bright tangerine for the part. What that fresh-faced boy didn't know was that he'd grow up to become the most famous Superman of his generation, starring in television's Adventures of Superman through the 1950s. To millions of children, he truly was the Man of Steel. Then came June 16, 1959. George Reeves was found dead in his Benedict Canyon home, killed by a single gunshot to the head. He was 45. Police ruled it suicide. Almost no one believed believed them. There were unexplained bullet holes in the bedroom wall, suspicious timing, no fingerprints on the gun, and whispers of a dangerous affair with the studio executive's wife. So I'll ask you straight. Drop a comment below. Based on the evidence, do you think the Man of Steel took his own life? Or was he silenced? His death has never truly closed, and it lit the fuse on the legend of the Superman curse. His closest friend on that set refused to accept the verdict, and that friend is coming later on this list. But next, we return to the one cast member who would outlive every single person you've met so far. Number 6 is Olivia de Havilland, who played the gentle Melanie Hamilton, Ashley's wife and Scarlett's quiet rival. She was born July 1st, 1916 in Tokyo, Japan, to British parents. Olivia de Havilland played sweet, selfless Melanie Hamilton, the gentlest soul in all of Gone with the Wind. The real woman was something else entirely. At just 9 years old, she wrote out a will leaving all my beauty to my younger sister Joan, since she has none. That wasn't a childish phase. It was the opening shot in a war that lasted 60 years. Off-screen, she also fell hard for her dashing swashbuckler co-star, Hollywood's married bad boy Errol Flynn. When she finally demanded he leave his wife, he chose the wife. It crushed her. But the real battle was with her sister, fellow Oscar winner Joan Fontaine, pitted against her by their own mother since childhood. At the 1947 Academy Awards, fresh off her first Oscar win, Olivia turned her back on Joan's outstretched hand in front of the cameras. The sisters didn't speak for 5 years. Anyone who mistook Melanie's softness for weakness paid for it. When Warner Brothers tried to trap her in a never-ending contract, de Havilland dragged one of the most powerful studios on Earth into court, and won. The ruling still carries her name, the de Havilland Law, the case that finally shattered the studio's grip on actors. She simply refused to fade. At 101, she sued a TV network over how it portrayed her. And Gentle Melanie, the character who dies in the story, became the very last cast member standing in real life. Melanie dies, she once laughed, and I didn't. She let go in 2020, in her beloved Paris. She was 104. For now, meet the man who played Scarlett's father, and quietly won everything an actor can win. Number 7 is Thomas Mitchell, who played Gerald O'Hara, Scarlett's hot-tempered, land-loving Irish father. He was born July 11, 1892, in Elizabeth, New Jersey, the kind of face everyone knew without ever learning the name. But that year, this ordinary character man was quietly building one of the rarest careers in entertainment history. The very same year he made Gone with the Wind, Mitchell won the Academy Award for another 1939 film, Stagecoach. And he didn't stop there. Thomas Mitchell became the first man ever to win the Triple Crown of acting, an Oscar, an Emmy, and a Tony. Few performers in any era have matched it. You almost certainly know another of his roles. A few years later, he played kindly, forgetful Uncle Billy in It's a Wonderful Life, the man who loses the money and nearly destroys George Bailey. Once you see it, you'll never unsee Scarlett's father in that performance. Thomas Mitchell died December 17, 1962, of cancer. He was 70. Next, we meet Scarlett's sharp-tongued little sister, whose real life was wilder than anything in the script. Number 8 is Evelyn Keyes, who played Sue Ellen O'Hara, Scarlett's jealous, complaining younger sister. She was born November 20, 1916, in Port Arthur, Texas. Young and hungry when she landed a role in the biggest film of the age. On-screen, she was the whining little sister. Off-screen, she was the one everyone was chasing. Evelyn Keyes lived a love life that left half of Hollywood breathless, marrying director Charles Vidor, then the legendary director John Huston, and later band leader Artie Shaw, who'd already worked his way through some of the most famous women alive. She was funny, fearless, and flatly refused to play the demure starlet. Late in life, she wrote a tell-all memoir built right around her place in the film, the younger sister who watched the whole world fall for Scarlett. Evelyn Keyes lived long. She died July 4, 2008, Independence Day, of uterine cancer. She was 91. Now, I'll keep the promise I made earlier. Remember the boy who became Superman and the friend who never believed he killed himself? Here he is. Number 9 is Fred Crane, who played Brent Tarleton, the other red-haired twin on the porch of Tara. He was born Herman Frederick Crane on March 22, 1918, in New Orleans. He wandered into an audition almost by accident, charmed the room with his southern drawl, and landed the job with no real acting experience. Listen closely to the film's very first lines, and you're hearing him. Before Scarlett speaks, before Rhett, before any of it, it's Brent Tarleton who opens the entire movie, talking war and college on the steps of Tara. He and George Reeves became close friends on that set and stayed close for 20 years, until Reeves's death in 1959. Crane went to his own grave never accepting the suicide ruling about his friend. After Hollywood, he became a beloved classical music radio host for decades. Later, he and his wife bought an antebellum mansion in Georgia and turned it into a bed and breakfast and Gone with the Wind museum, where fans could hear his stories straight from the source. Fred Crane died August 21, 2008, in a hospital near Atlanta after years of heart trouble and diabetes. He was 90. Next comes one of the strangest casting illusions in the whole film, a mother who was barely older than her own daughter. Number 10 is Barbara O'Neill, who played Ellen O'Hara, Scarlett's saintly, devoted mother. She was born July 17, 1910, in St. Louis, into serious wealth. Her father a lumber baron and poet, her mother a leading voice in the women's suffrage movement. Now look closely at Ellen O'Hara's face on screen, because the studio pulled off a quiet optical illusion. Through careful makeup, soft lighting, and matronly costuming, they aged Barbara O'Neill into Vivien Leigh's mother, when in reality she was only 28 years old. That's just 3 years older than the actress playing her daughter. Strip away the gray-toned hair and the shadows, and the mother could have passed for Scarlett's sister. She was no minor talent either. The very next year, she earned an Academy Award nomination for All This and Heaven 2. Her own marriage was brief. She wed director Joshua Logan in 1940, divorced 2 years later, and never married again. One of her final films was The Nun Story, opposite Audrey Hepburn. Barbara O'Neill died September 3, 1980, of a heart attack. She was 70. Now brace yourself. The next man met one of the most sudden, shocking deaths of anyone on this list. Number 11 is Oscar Polk, who played Pork, the loyal house servant at Tara. He was born December 25, 1899, Christmas Day, in Marianna, Arkansas. He trained as a dancer before becoming a respected stage and screen actor, sharing scenes with Hattie McDaniel and Butterfly McQueen. Here's what most viewers never realize about his role. One of the film's quietly devastating turns belongs to Pork when he tells a ruined Scarlett that the back taxes on Tara have run up sky high. $300, a fortune at the time. It's the moment her entire world begins to crumble. But it's how Oscar Polk died that truly haunts people. On January 4, 1949, he stepped off a curb in Times Square in New York City and was struck and killed by a taxicab. He was 49. It had been just 10 days since his birthday. At the time, he was about to take a major role in a new Broadway play. That role went instead to a young actor named Ossie Davis, who had become a legend in his own right. From a sudden tragedy, we turn to the longest, gentlest life on this list, the woman who walked away from fame to pick up a paintbrush. Number 12 is Alicia Rhett, who played India Wilkes, Ashley's cold, watchful sister who never trusted Scarlett for a second. She was born February 1, 1915, in Savannah, Georgia, into an old Southern family. Director George Cukor spotted her in a small Charleston theater production and brought her to Hollywood. Part of what caught the studio's eye was almost too perfect. Her real last name was Rhett, the very same as Rhett Butler, and the publicity team adored the coincidence. She first read for Melanie, lost it to Olivia de Havilland, and was handed India instead. But fame had her in its grip, and she let go. After the film, she went home to Charleston and walked away from movies forever. Instead, she became a gifted portrait painter, her work hanging in grand homes and institutions across the South for decades. And she lived, and lived. Alicia Rhett became the oldest surviving credited cast member of Gone with the Wind. She died January 3, 2014 in Charleston, just shy of her 99th birthday. She was 98. 2 left. The next man played a proud Southern patriarch, but his real story reaches back to a Hollywood that no longer exists. Number 13 is Howard Hickman, who played John Wilkes, the dignified master of 12 Oaks and Ashley's father. He was born February 9, 1880 in Columbia, Missouri. And here is the fact that should stop you in your tracks. By the time he played this proud old father, Howard Hickman had already been a major movie star, back when movies couldn't even talk. In the silent era, Hickman was a leading man and a director, helming around 19 films and appearing in well over 100. He stood in front of cameras when Hollywood was still raw dirt and wooden stages, when the rules of filmmaking were being invented week by week. He watched an entire industry rise from nothing. Then sound arrived, and the world he'd ruled simply moved on without him. The silent matinee idol was reduced to small parts: dignified fathers, judges, men in the background. Gone with the Wind was one of those roles. As a small irony, he was only about 13 years older than Leslie Howard, the man playing his son, a pioneer who built the medium, ending his days as a face in the crowd of a film that would outlive him by a century. For 42 years, he was married to silent screen actress Bessie Barriscale. They're buried together today. Howard Hickman died December 31st, 1949, New Year's Eve, of a heart attack. He was 69. And now, the final story. This one never reached the screen at all, yet its ghost haunts the entire legend of the film. Number 14. The Ghost of Melanie. Our final story belongs to a woman who never actually appeared on screen, but whose ghost haunts the entire legacy of the film. Andrea Leeds came heartbreakingly close to becoming part of this legend, and the door closed in her face. She was born Antoinette Lees on August 18, 1913, in Butte, Montana, the daughter of a mining engineer. By the late 1930s, she was a rising star with a soft, soulful screen presence. Just 2 years before Gone with the Wind, she earned an Academy Award nomination for Stage Door, playing a desperate young actress who takes her own life after losing the role of her dreams. Critics adored her in it, and then life echoed the part with cruel precision. She read for Melanie Hamilton, the very role that went to Olivia de Havilland. She came right up to the edge of immortality and lost. The film would go on to define the century. She would not be in a single frame of it. But her ending isn't a bitter one. Andrea Leeds simply chose a different life. She married, left Hollywood behind around 1940, and became a successful horse breeder, content far from the cameras that nearly made her a legend. Andrea Leeds died May 21, 1984. She was 70. So there they are, 14 lives pulled into the orbit of a single film from 1939. And here's the truth that stays with you. From the king of Hollywood to the boy who became Superman, from the mother who was barely older than her daughter to the painter who lived to 98, every last one of them is now gone. The final one to leave was Olivia de Havilland, Gentle Melanie, who held on until 2020, all the way to 104. When she closed her eyes, the last living thread of Gone with the Wind was cut. The faces still flicker on the screen, the voices still speak, but the people behind them have all said their goodbyes. Frankly, my dear, they may be gone with the wind, but they will never, ever be forgotten.